When scapegoat survivors think it's only me who finds this difficult. When you feel challenged by a task, do you also feel like the only one who finds it to be challenging? Does feeling challenged remind you that you are inadequate in some way? When you look around, does it seem like others can easily do what you seem to be struggling to do? Well, life can be hard, and this is true whether you grew up with a narcissistic parent or not. Fortunately, most children are encouraged and supported when they encounter challenges in life. The scapegoat child to a narcissistic parent doesn't fare as well, though. If they encounter a challenge, they are undermined by and/or ignored by their narcissistic parent. Neither reaction by their parent sets the child up for success. As a result, scapegoat children and survivors may avoid challenges. The emotional cost can be just too severe. They've been conditioned to associate challenges with feeling inferior, strange, and alone. The rub is that the challenges are a natural part of realizing our full potentials. To avoid them is to avoid one's full self. Scapegoat survivors are often painfully aware of this fact. They can experience a gnawing sense of not living as fully as they'd like to be. Yet the pain and felt futility of facing a challenge can remain to feel like too much. One of the ways challenges can feel painful is in the experience that you're the only one facing them. In today's video, I explain how the scapegoat child believes they are inferior, strange, and alone if something doesn't come easily. These beliefs weaken when they see that someone they admire faces similar struggles. And watch until the end because I will offer an exercise to discover that you are not the only one who finds challenges difficult. Well, my name is Jay Reed, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist in California, and I specialize in recovering from narcissistic abuse. In my professional and personal experience, I've worked to identify the fundamentals to the process of recovery. And this has led me to what I call the 3 pillars of recovery. Pillar number 1 is making sense of what happened so that you know it wasn't your fault. Pillar number 2 is moving away from narcissistic abusers and towards safe people. And pillar number 3 is living in defiance of the narcissist rules. I think it's also essential to find and participate in communities of people who can get, validate, and support you on this path. I've seen and experienced large improvements in quality of life after applying these pillars. And I also want to mention that I'm offering a new free ebook called 4 Ways to Heal for Adult Scapegoat Survivors. And in it, I offer 4 strategies to reclaim your authentic self from the fake and painful scapegoat identity, how to learn and apply the science behind gaining distance from narcissistic abusers, 3, know the secret to reducing social anxiety for scapegoat survivors. And 4, how to accept yourself as the fallible and valuable person you are. You can find the link to the book in the description box below. Challenges make the scapegoat child feel inferior, strange, and alone. The scapegoat child to a narcissistic parent has to identify with all the bad feelings the parent cannot tolerate in themselves. It's a psychologically brutal arrangement. The child needs to share reality with a parent. To do otherwise would feel like being nobody to no one. The only reality the narcissistic parent offers is one where the child is defective and undeserving, and the parent is supposedly superior. So the child takes the only tack that ensures their survival. They become an inferior somebody to a superior someone, the parent. The scapegoat child is forced to believe they cannot do anything important right. The catch is that anything important is going to contain some challenging moments. Most people are encouraged to work to overcome challenges. When the scapegoat child encounters a challenge, they go unsupported. Their parent may even use the fact that the child is feeling challenged as proof that the child is inferior. An adequate person, again, supposedly, would not find the situation challenging at all. This leaves the child, and later the survivor, feeling inferior, strange, and alone when they take on challenges. How the scapegoat child is made to feel inferior in the face of challenges. Well, the scapegoat child is in a terrible predicament when it comes to their own self-worth. Their narcissistic parent does not want them to feel good about who they are, nor what they can do, because this would threaten their parent's ability to relocate their own worthlessness into the child. And yet, the child needs to retain hope that they can figure out how to one day feel like they are of worth. So, scapegoat children may stay hopeful that they have worth by privately telling themselves that they are, in fact, great. In this secret place within themselves, they can insist on their worth. The rub is that this worth has to be based on exaggerated claims about their traits and abilities. These claims are inflated to counter the parent's message that the child, is worthless. The child cannot bring these elevated claims about themselves into their reality. Every time they do, they come up short and feel crestfallen and disappointed. The scapegoat child, who secretly sees themselves as the smartest person in their class, feels crushed by getting a B grade. The scapegoat child, who sees themselves as the best soccer player, is devastated when they don't make an all-star team. These setbacks are so painful because their parent is setting them up to feel worthless at a baseline level. So a setback dunks the child in the tank of worthlessness that they are working so hard to save themselves from. Over time, the scapegoat child may learn to avoid challenges. Experience tells them that the only result is feeling inferior. At this point, they can't see how life has been rigged against them. They assume that their privately held high standards are their own, and they are just simply not living up to them. They can't see yet that their standards have to be so high to combat their parents' efforts to devalue them. Well, let's look at an anonymized case to illustrate again. Rick never felt loved as a child. For as long as he can remember, he felt like a burden and an outcast to his family. His mother related to Rick as if he did not know the proper way to live. If he was walking in front of her, she would say he was slouching and needs better posture. If he was chewing at the dinner table, she would say he swallows his bites too soon and needs to slow down. If he was happy for any reason, she would criticize him for being supposedly selfish. Despite all of his mother's efforts to tear him down, Rick found a way to keep thinking of himself as likable and smart. He would identify which of his classmates he wanted to become friends with. Then he would set about talking to them and playing with them at recess. Over time, a friendship would develop. In third grade, Rick saw that some of the kids in his class got taken to a special class on certain afternoons. He asked his teacher why, and she told him that they were part of this gifted program. He resolved right there to gain access to it. He found out about the test he had to take and asked his teacher to recommend it for him. He took it and was told that he had done well enough to join the program. He was elated. He felt like now he could finally believe that there was something special about him. His parents had to sign a permission slip to let him join. When his mother looked at it, she unilaterally decided that he should not be separated from his other classmates. Rick's heart was broken. He begged and pleaded for her to change her mind, but to no avail. Rick spent the rest of third grade feeling the sting of inferiority every time his classmates were gathered to attend the gifted class. Well, I want to emphasize here that having a private, elevated picture of yourself does not necessarily make one narcissistic. I think folks can do this while still having empathy for others. And it also does not mean that having such an elevated perception to combat the scapegoating message means that you are coercing others to reflect back this elevated picture. And yes, it may be something that has to be addressed in the recovery process, because finding a better quality of life will likely involve finding a more realistic basis for self-esteem. Why the scapegoat child feels strange in the face of challenges. Scapegoat children were often reacted to as if there was something uniquely wrong with them when they faced a challenge. To remark about the difficulty of something was to invite alienation. They might get something like, "What is it about you, child, that you cannot easily do this?" Their narcissistic parent pushes their own self-doubt into the child, then recoils from it. The child is left feeling strange for finding a challenge to be difficult. So let's look at another example. Jack was told to do a lot in his home growing up. Many of his father's demands were beyond what a kid Jack's age should be able to do. At age 6, his father told him to clean the garage and that it should take him at least 3 hours. Jack felt a surge of frustration and despair charge through him. He said, "But Dad, I don't want to. It's Saturday. I want to go play with my friends." His dad responded, "Oh, Mr. Weiner, what is it now?" As he derisively laughed at Jack. Jack felt the burn of shame add to his exasperation. His father was acting like it was a sign of weakness that Jack didn't want to clean the garage as a 6-year-old. His complete lack of validation for Jack's protest left Jack feeling strange for finding this task daunting and aversive. Jack wasn't strange for not wanting to clean a garage instead of play with his friends at age 6. If his father had validated Jack's complaints, even if he continued to ask him to clean the garage, Jack would have likely felt less strange. But his father used this opportunity to mock Jack for complaining. His mockery likely served to protect himself from feeling daunted by any of his own tasks in life. It was his son, not he, who found certain tasks challenging. The threat to Jack's father's inflated sense of self-worth had been nullified, but at Jack's great expense. How the scapegoat child is made to feel alone in the face of challenges. The scapegoat child does not get the support and encouragement needed to find challenges attainable. Narcissistic parents can see their own needs as most important. So if their child needs something from them, then that child is selfishly taking away from who is the most important. This logic extends to the child who seeks help or support in the face of a challenge. The result for the child is going without the experience of feeling like someone else is on their side. This experience is crucial in order to feel protected and validated in life. It also helps one feel confident in the face of challenges. The child whose parent has shown belief in them, even when the child's belief in themselves was flagging, will have a strong basis for self-confidence. In contrast, when the scapegoat child faced a challenge and would look around, they'd find nobody on their side in order to shore up their belief in themselves. Well, let's go back to Rick to illustrate. Rick wanted to be the fastest runner on his cross-country team in high school. At the first practice, though, he was beat handily by 3 of the other runners on the team. He felt dejected. He said to himself, "I'm nowhere near as good as I thought. I don't know what I was thinking." He told no one of his disappointment because he expected them to react as if he was stupid in the first place for thinking that he could be the fastest. He had to tend to this wound alone. He found his joy in running wither over the course of the season. His goal was no longer to be the best, but rather to just not come in last. A strategy to feel adequate, normal, and connected in the face of challenges. I find the process of writing to be important, a meaningful one. And I actually write out what I say in these videos each week to gather my thoughts and kind of figure things out. As important as I find this process to be, I don't find it easy. Some days when I sit down to write, my thoughts are running around like cats. Instead of seeing the progress made and what has been written so far, for instance, I might only see the flaws in it. A lot of the time I can find some footing to kind of proceed with the writing, but sometimes I just have to put it off for the day. Well, I've actually always felt inferior, strange, and alone when these writing challenges come up. In my mind's eye, I see the other people who write who I imagine who write in this field and assume that they face no such challenges. They sort of would sit down at their computer and produce 1,500 impeccable words with ease. Well, this shifted the other day. I was talking to a trusted friend and colleague who also writes, and I had always admired their writing and had assumed that they find it to be an easy process. Well, that day, earlier than when I was speaking to them, I could not get underway with my writing. I was frustrated, and it occurred to me to ask this friend if he ever encountered challenges when trying to write. And I wholly expected him to look at me like I was strange and exclaim that he never has, or sort of act dismissively, not because of who he was, but just what I've kind of learned to expect. And instead, he very much surprised me. He said, well, yeah, I procrastinate all the time. And then I get frustrated with myself for not writing as much as I had hoped that day. And I said, really? Do you ever find that you can't gather your thoughts or make a linear argument? And he said, oh, absolutely. Other times I'll have so many different thoughts racing through that I can't even seem to organize them. I said, I always thought I was the only one who found writing to be hard. And he responded, no way, you are not alone, and it is not easy. Well, I bring up this story just to illustrate one way to combat feeling inferior, strange, and alone in the face of a challenge. For those who've survived scapegoat narcissistic abuse, asking someone whom you admire and who is likely to be honest whether they find something challenging too can counter the messages received about challenges from a narcissistic parent. Benefits to asking others what they find challenging. Asking someone whom you admire whether they feel challenged in similar ways to you can help you conclude that you're not the only one. If someone you admire struggles at times too, then you must not be inferior for doing the same. These kinds of questions may also help you discover that you are on a more equal playing field with the people you admire. A narcissistic parent goes out of their way to make their scapegoat child feel like they are of lower status. Finding out that you are more similar than different to someone you admire when it comes to challenges can help restore your sense of being of equal status. Next, if you are in good company when challenged, then there's less justification to criticize yourself. The scapegoat survivor gets to recalibrate their definition of what is good enough. It no longer has to mean that everything comes easily. Finally, you can find it safe to regard challenges as a normal part of pursuing important goals. The person you admire is able to achieve important goals, yet they face similar challenges as you on the way to those goals. Challenges may therefore be expected in pursuit of things that are meaningful. Instead of cause for self-criticism, they can be signals that you are on a path that matters to you. An exercise to destigmatize feeling challenged. This exercise will help you get firsthand information about whether you should feel inferior, alone, and strange for facing challenges today. And here are the steps. First, write down 3 goals that are important to you. Second, write down all the challenges you face in reaching these goals. Third, select someone you admire who is pursuing or has achieved this goal. 4, find a way to ask that person if they face or have faced similar challenges. And 5, record the results. So then whenever you feel challenged and self-critical, you can refer to this document. And over time, you may feel much less stigmatized for feeling challenged, even if that stigmatization's, kind of coming from yourself as based on history. Well, I hope you found today's video helpful on this tactic of how to kind of reclaim the right to take on challenges in the process of recovering from narcissistic abuse as a scapegoat survivor. Well, I want to thank everyone again for your continued support of this channel and the community that's sort of formed around it. It's awesome to read the comments each week and just see how focused it really all of them are on the process of recovery. I guess I say that in the sense that it's not so much about demonizing folks who have pathological narcissism, but rather on identifying and mending the effects of having to have been in a close relationship with someone like this. And so I think that's just a really important kind of emphasis of focus that just seems to really be there. And I very much appreciate. And so from Brizo back there and myself, we look forward to seeing you again next Friday. Take care.